Hey, God bless my brothers and sisters, and welcome back to part 2 of Jerusalem's walls being torn down in terrible times and being restored. And we're basically going off the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verse 25 through 27. This is the main focus. There are other scriptures that speak of it as well. Last week we got into about Jerusalem getting surrounded and being besieged, and we can bring that back up here as well. First, let me welcome you to T. Michael's House of Faith, where love and truth is established in our Lord Jesus. My goal is to expose the false teachings and bring out the hidden truths they don't wish to talk about, helping each other fight the conscious mind as well as taking on other people's burdens by being supportive and loving and comforting to one another. I am non-professional. This is for educational purpose, not therapy. Thank you guys so much for coming back, joining in. Thank you for your support, for your following, subscribing. I hope you get a lot of learning out of this. I hope you really do get into a lot of reading to understand. The more you read the scriptures, more familiar you get with them, easier it is to understand things. So, especially that I'm going over, because I'm just highlighting a lot of this stuff. It'd take too long to read it all out. And hopefully in your spare time, this gives you the time and the ability to read into the book of Maccabees as well as we're taking a look. Last week, we went in, let's pull up Zechariah. We'll do a little recap here. Verse 12, I think it's 2 and 3. And this is where we talked about how Jerusalem would be surrounded by all nations, and they'd be laid to siege against Judah and against Jerusalem. And of course, we go into First Maccabees, the first chapter, first 3 verses. Actually, go down to 3 here. How they were. The first one says how they were surrounded round about by all nations, and then down here it shows you, the Arabs and the children of Israel. They besieged Israel and gave them a great overthrow. You can see this taking place just like Zechariah spoke about it. And then we get in the book of Daniel 9:25, in which we'll read over and go through. Not 5:25, all the way down. There we go. Before we get into that, let me go back all the way to the beginning. Moses carried the children of Israel. This was Moses' inheritance. He carried them through the desert, and they finally got into Israel. And when he traveled through the desert with these people, they had their tent, which was their temple, and it is a traveling temple, right? And they kept setting it up where they would they'd go so far, then they'd stop and set it up and give sacrifices and stuff, and lived there for a while until they got to Israel. When they got into Israel, Joshua crossed in to Israel with the people, and then they established the very first temple, which was in Israel, because everything was done for that nation, the nation of Israel. The covenant was the 10 Commandments for the land of Israel only. No other nation had this. That's why they got jealous about Israel, them having a God and all their godly things. That the other nations, they had to make up their own gods. They had to make statues and make false gods. So, because they were jealous of Israel having their God. And now Nebuchadnezzar, however you pronounce his name, king of Babylon, Neb, he went in and he destroyed the very first temple. And then you read 2 Kings chapter 25, like 8 through 10. He went in and took all the Jews out into captivity because they weren't following God's way. If you didn't follow God's way, keep to his commandments and laws, he would have you taken out of the land, for the land could keep its holiness and it could keep its Sabbath day in peace because they weren't following. Okay, so After 70 years of captivity, they were set free and they were granted to rebuild the temple or build a second temple. And that's what got accomplished. You can read about that. Jeremiah chapter 29, like verse 10 and on, you can read. Second Chronicles chapter 36, verse 20, 21 also speak about the 70-year captivity. And after that, they were free to go out and they were able to make the second temple. In the book of Ezra, it also speaks of it in chapter 6, verse 14 and 16, how they completed it. Now, when you get in the book of Nehemiah, that talks about how they built up the wall around the temples, around Jerusalem, and they established the walls in the book of Nehemiah. And then the prophets come out, and Daniel comes after Nehemiah. Now he comes out, and now the temple's established, the wall's established, everything's good. They're back on track with God until they go against God again. And God at one point says, "I won't have you taken out anymore, and it won't be like that." And that's when the end time comes, because the end time comes, in which really is the book of Maccabees. Once we look at it and go through it and see how the walls were torn down, Jerusalem was laid to be besieged and all that stuff. And we'll read through this, Daniel 9. Now therefore, and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince. So this will be in the time of their Messiah, which is their prince, which is the Jewish prince, and shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The streets shall be built again, and the walls, even in troubled times, in terrible times, times of tribulation, they will be built. And that's exactly what the book of Maccabees explains. I read through this before, how Judas, he came back down out of the mountains to restore the streets, because the first chapter, really, when you get into the book of Maccabees, first Maccabees, chapter 1, it gets right into how they came out, destroyed Egypt, and came for Jerusalem, and they laid besiege to Jerusalem, and tearing down the sanctuary, stopping them from sacrifices, stopping them from anything godly, anything. I mean, they couldn't have their children even circumcised. If their children was circumcised, each month they go into their land and hang those children, then drag the women out in the streets. And then in the streets, they even had their wicked, evil altars doing ungodly sacrifices. And they also overtook the temple, destroyed the temple down, and put their pagans and the ungodly sacrifices in there, their statues and ungodly gods inside the Hebrews, the Jews' godly temple, which was a temple to the God of Israel, right? And that's what we're getting. And what we're focusing on now is the walls being torn down. As last week, we explained how they got surrounded by the nations. Now they're besieged. Now the walls are being torn down. Now they're going to be built back up again. Let's finish reading here through Daniel. Verse 26, and after 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolation are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause sacrifices and oblations to cease. And for the overspreading of the abominations, he shall make it desolate even until the consummation, and that is determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So, and you get right into the book of Maccabees too, and you see how they stopped the sacrifices. They stopped them from their godly worshiping. They tore down the altar. They destroyed everything. And now we get into the book of Maccabees, how it's destroyed, and they rebuild it back up, and then it gets torn back down, and they rebuild it back up, and that's exactly what this is talking about. The walls will be rebuilt, and the streets will be rebuilt. And Judas came down out of the mountains. Even in the book of Revelations tells you they'll flee in the mountains to the dens, and hiding up there because the wrath of God comes down on them. And we'll speak later about the wrath of God, but let's go over into the book of Maccabees, right? Verse 1, 31. We'll start off here, 31, 33. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire and pulled down the house and walls thereof on every side. And of course, this was the Greeks coming in. And you got the Greeks paired, and you got all nations paired up together. I mean, they fought against each other, but they're still always against Israel. And that's what it says in the prophecies too. A nation will be against nation, and you can see this all happening in the book of Maccabees once you read it over and over and get familiar with it. But the women and the children took they captive and possessed the cattle. Then built the city of David with a great and strong wall and mighty towers, and made a stronghold of them. And they just made it ungodly, is what they're doing here. And you can read that. And they put their sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified therein. So they put all the wickedness in there, doing wicked sacrifice. This way they can get nations to look on Israel and say, look how ungodly they are. Look what they're doing. They're such horrible people. And that's how they get other nations to hate people, is going because they think they're evil. But yet they're the evil ones. Take the beam out of your own eye before you try to take your brother's splinter out of his eye, right? For it was placed to lie in wait against the sanctuary and the evil adversary to Israel. And you can read all about that in chapter 1. We got to keep moving so we can get this done in a decent amount of time. I'd like to read through all this and really get into it, explaining it a little more detailed, but it would just take so much time. So let's go to chapter 4, down here to verse 60. Let's see here. Moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel obtained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season for year to year. And this is pretty neat too, because God said he'll bring people of nations, especially like Egypt, to worship him from year to year. And this is where this is taking place. It's going to be set up so they can come in and do this from year to year. And that's what the book of Ezekiel, you got well, you have the 7-year tribulation on Israel, but in that too as well, you have the 40 years of inequity on Israel, and that's actually when they went to hang or crucify Jesus, playing on to play to crucify him. He said, his blood's not on my hands. He washed his hands. And they said, this blood will be on our heads and our children's heads. Crucify him. And that's where that 40-year inequity came up on the Jews during that time. And we can read about this. And this is the book of Maccabees, I believe, was written in 70 AD. And this was the final book written. But moving on anyways, let's get to verse 60, what we're supposed to be reading. At that time also they built up Mount Zion with high walls and strong towers round about, lest the Gentiles should come and tread it down as they had done before, right? So they've already come in and destroyed it once. Now they're trying to rebuild it so that they and hope that they don't come in and destroy it again. So let's go skip ahead here to verse 6, all the way down to 62. And that's the thing about reading the book of Maccabees. It might not be very many chapters, but some of these chapters have like 70 verses in them. That's a lot to read. But it's very interesting, and it keeps you very intent with it. I don't know. It keeps you mind focused with it. It's so interesting. Okay, so 662 is what we want down here. Then the king entered into Mount Zion, but when he saw the strength of the place, he broke his oath that he had made and gave commandments to pull it down the wall around about. Right? What was the one I was talking about? That maybe it's this one if we go up to 954. And oops, we'll go this way. Moreover, in the 153rd year, in the second month, Alchemius commanded that the wall of the inner court of the sanctuary should be pulled down. He pulled down also the works of the prophets. And he began to pull down even in the time was Alchemius plagued. Oh, this is where God just kind of destroys him and shuts his mouth up so he couldn't even speak no more. Because what he is doing to the Jewish people. This is really interesting to read. That's not what I wanted to get into. 1045. This talks about building of the walls too. I'll go 44. For the building also and repairing of the works of the sanctuary experience shall be given of the king's accounts. So in other words, the king, the one that came in and did this, he's saying, well, you know what? We see all the bad things that are happening to us because we keep going against it. We're gonna pay for this. We're gonna give to you all the necessities, the money, the cost, whatever it takes to build up these walls again. Yes, for building of the walls, Jerusalem, and the fortifying of round about, expenses shall be given out to the king's accounts, as also for building of the walls in Judea. So obviously they tore down the walls in Jerusalem and in Judea, like it would happen in prophecies. Now, when Jonathan, which is the brother of Judas, because Judas passed away, they need to let Simon and Jonathan, and that's when they took over, because the Jewish people were like, now Judas is dead, and they turned to Simon and said, Simon, you got to lead the way for us. Judas is gone. He is one that had a great connection with God and was overthrowing all the Gentiles. I want to say heathens, but Gentiles. But they were the heathens. They're the bad Gentiles. And because remember the great now this is Jonathan. He denies. He says, "I don't want none of your money. You people are evil. You've done nothing but evil works to us. We don't need your money. We don't need nothing from you." He denied their help. In which why wouldn't you, right? Let's go forward to chapter 12. We'll go down 36, 37 here. And making the walls of Jerusalem higher and raising great mounts between the tower and the city to be separate and from the city, that so it might be alone that men might neither sell nor buy in it. All right. This is huge to also bring up. What did Jesus do in his time? He went into the temple because they're defiling it. He kicked them out. You turned my father's house into a den of thieves. It's supposed to be a house of prayer. And now they go in after rebuilding this up, and they said, now you're not allowed to buy and sell in it anymore. All right. So obviously Jesus said this. Then when they were rebuilding it and stuff, they put in that you can't buy and sell out of it, right? So because that's what they were doing in the terrible times. They destroyed the sanctuary. They overtook it. They were doing their ungodly sacrifices and doing all these things in it. Okay, so let's read 37 now. Upon this they came together to build up the city, for as much as the wall towards the brook of the east side was fallen down, and they repaired that which was called Kephnethia. Kephnethia. Yeah. All right, so I don't know how to pronounce that city. So the walls, and there's so much to get into. Let's keep moving forward here. 13:10, I'm going too far ahead. All right. So then gathered together all the men of war and made haste to finish the walls of Jerusalem, and he fortified it around about. See, now they're getting the walls all built back up again. I don't know if I missed skip the verse of the reproach of the heathens. But then Simon, which is the brother of Judas and Jonathan, I think he's an older brother, older than Jonathan, but the young brother of Judas. Judas led the way, then it was led up to Simon, and then you got your brother Jonathan as well, the three brothers, and built the strongholds in Judea, and fenced them about with high towers and great walls, and gates and barriers, and laid up vertical therein. And this is very interesting because even in the time, they're building all this up, and they're magnifying it even better than what it was, right? And why wouldn't you? If you're restoring something, why restore it to its original state? Let's make it a little bit better if we're putting all this work into it, right? Why wouldn't you do that? And we'll get in and we'll take a look at some of these scriptures, like in the book of Mark, Matthew, and Luke, how it talks about how Jesus even said, yeah, you're restoring all this stuff, but there ain't going to be one stone left on top of another. It's all going to be torn down again, And that's where they went down. They destroyed it. They're rebuilding it. And you can see that they're getting kicked out of the temple for buying and selling it as Jesus spoke that. I mean, this is so much proof putting this stuff together that this was truly the end times that was speaken about by the prophets. Okay, I missed something in 1037. 1037 through 45. What does this talk about? Simon would speak to gates and barriers. We would pray that Jonathan would not suffer them. Okay, so I'll leave that in the scriptures for you guys to read through up to verse 45. And put the people to so great trouble, seeing there is no war between us. I don't remember. I had that circle. And I got 1623 as well circled here. It's concerning the rest of the acts of John and his wars and worthy deeds which he did, and the building of the walls which he made in his doing. Behold, these are all written in Chronicles of the priesthood from the time he was made high priest after his father. So obviously the book of Maccabees, what it's speaking back to the book of Chronicles. So obviously the book of Maccabees is true, because Chronicles speaks of this happening. So, okay, so let's look into some stuff here. They stopped the sacrifices. We can go back to First Maccabees 144. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and that the city of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifices, drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbath and the festival days and polluted the sanctuary and the holy people. Right? Exactly what's explained in Daniel chapter 9:25. And we can see second book of Maccabees, chapter 6. What is this? Verse 1 through 7. I don't think we're going to read all through verse 1 through 7. Not as long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews to depart from the laws of their fathers and not to live after the laws of God, and polluted also the temple in Jerusalem and called it the temple of Jupiter Olympius, and that in Garism of Jupiter, the defender of strangers, as they did desire and dwell in the place. Okay, and that's another thing in the book of Romans. The gay people, God said he granted it, put in their heart to do as they wish. So they came in doing as they wish unto the Gentiles. And of course they were against the Gentiles. But I'm not going to read all through up through 7, but I'll put this in the descriptions below, and you guys can read through that when you get time, hopefully. So there'll be a lot of good information there as well. let's move forward here. Let's get into some newer scriptures like John 2:20. And this, and said the Jews, 46 years was the temple and building, and that what you rear it up in 3 days. And he spoke of the temple of his body, in which that original temple that they're restoring 46 years, the original second temple that was built, when after Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the first one, the second one that built, and it didn't even take them 20 years to restore it, I don't think. I'd have to go back and look at that. So 46 years building, and 46 years was this temple in building. So that, they say, is the repairing. They're repairing and rebuilding it and making it better. And it's 46 years and 20 years. And basically the whole time Jesus is growing up, they're rebuilding the temple, making it better, making it straight. But the Gentiles are coming in, destroying it, destroying the walls, and they got to rebuild it. And Jesus even said himself, there won't be one stone left up on another that won't be tossed down, because they're marveling about, look how great this building is. Look what we're doing. We're building this great temple. And of course, they had a lot of pride in it because it's for their God, the God of Israel. That's the house of God. That was everything. And it should have been. Mark 13, 1 and 2. As he went out of the temple, one of his disciples says unto him, Master, see what manner of stones that what builds are here. In other words, look at what we're doing, we're accomplishing with the great temple of our God of Israel. And Jesus answers and said unto him, Seest you these great buildings? There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And he's telling these, you got terrible times coming. He said, this it's going to get destroyed again, right? And of course, this happens throughout the book of Maccabees. Matthew 24, in which people use this verse saying, this chapter is yet to come and happen, and this and that. No, it's not. This is past tense. Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him and show him the buildings of the temples. See, they're marveling about the temple. And Jesus said unto him, see, not that there will be one stone left upon another. It's going to be tossed down, laid to dice. And then, and that's when his disciples come and ask him, well, when is this going to take place? When is all this going to happen? And this and that. And he explains it to his apostles, his disciples, what's going to happen to them in their end time. And they try to play it out like it's our end time and that it's going to come up on us. But surely it's not, because we are in the book of Daniel 12:1 with Michael. The wisdom of man shall be increased, which will be the Gentiles. And now, because the covenant Jesus laid down, it's not about the Jews and Israel no more. We are all one. Gentiles are now brought into a covenant that is not a covenant unlike their fathers. We don't have prophecies and prophets. That was for the Jewish people. They seek signs. Okay, so Luke 19:43 and then Luke 21 verse 5. For the day shall come upon you that your enemies shall cast a trench about you. In other words, they're going to surround you and compress you around and keep you in on every side. In other words, he's warning you're going to be surrounded by all these nations and shall lay you even with the ground. And of course, we read that in the book of Maccabees, how they were laid to waste. And your children within you, and they shall not leave in you one stone upon another, because you know it's not the time of your visitation. And what is the time of their visitation? They're denying Jesus to be the Son of God. And that says that in John 6:40. Point that out real quick, because it's important to point some of this stuff out and pay attention to exactly what it says. And this is the will of him that sent me, the Father sending Jesus, right? That every one which sees the Son and believes on him may have everlasting life. You had to see Jesus and believe on him to have everlasting life. And that's what that was about. Okay, back to 19. I think we had one more verse to read through here. 43 and 44. We'll go to 44. And shall lay even with the ground and the children. Okay, I read all that. Okay, so. And went into the temple and began to cast out them that sold therein, and then bought, saying to them, it is written, my house is a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves, because they're buying and selling merchandise out of the temple of God. And that's when they restored it and said, you're no longer allowed to buy inside these inner courts. You can't buy and sell inside these inner courts. I don't know if it was inside all the walls of Jerusalem. I don't know if that was, but inside the courts of God, his temple, you were not allowed to buy and sell, right? They were trying to reestablish their temple. They were trying to make it holy again, restore all things. And just like the book of Daniel, it said would happen. They would restore the temple. They restore their streets in terrible times. And that's exactly what they did. Let's go here to 21:5. Let's finish this up. We're a half hour in already. I mean, that's how exciting it is. Just a little bit. It goes a long ways. Takes up a lot of time. The baptism of John was from heaven, and this ain't what we're looking for. 21. That's because we're off. A few things busy rambling on here. Okay, and as some spoke of the temple, how it was adored with goody stones and gifts, he said, as for these things which you behold, the days will come in there which shall not be left one stone upon another, and it shall be thrown down. All right. And of course, like I said before, the building and the restoring of this during the book of Maccabees, because God said from year to year, you'll come up and you'll still worship me from year to year. And so that's when they got it restored. And after that, they had, people of Egypt and other nations coming up, worshiping the God of Israel. Right? Even after Jesus laid down his covenant and given us his covenant, and we should strive by his laws and his commandments, abide in his love, not in the love of Moses, which people teach about. That's the problem with the church, is they teach to abide in the love of Moses and not to teach to abide in the love of Jesus. And that's a big issue we got about it. And that's something Paul warned us all about too, as well, in the book of Galatians. But something else to get into. I thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this brings you awareness about the book of Maccabees. I hope you really read into it, get familiar with it, so you can really see and put this stuff together and see the truth about the things. God bless you all. Thank you so much for tuning in to T. Michael's House of Faith. Until next time, God bless you all and keep the peace out there.